This little video series is called Dying Dar's Way, Radically Real Spiels on the End of Life. It's January 4th, 2020. I am moving through with relative grace the median survival time for stage 4 lung cancer. We've made about 60 videos now, and just observing some of the dopey stuff that's going on around me with my children and Roger and loved ones, people not quite sure how to be with us. I'm starting to change my attention to the grieving process now, and I've invited my friend Steve to talk about the organization Good Grief and his personal experiences, because you've experienced a lot of loss, Steve. Do you mind sharing with us whom you've lost?
Sure. My father to suicide at 13.
When you were 13?
When I was 13,
right.
And my mother, my sister, and my wife, and I was widowed in my mid-40s with 2 young children.
Okay. And the stretch of years and the involvement with the organization Good Grief has really helped you evolve how you deal with loss. Could you say more about that?
Well, it's interesting. When my father passed away, my mother sought out help from my brother, sister, and me, and she took us to a psychiatrist whose first thing to do was to show us some Rorschach tests, which at age 13...
Rorschach tests?
Rorschach tests. And at age 13, I thought, what does this have to do with grief?
Right.
And so, and then, 30 years later, my wife passed away and I had 2 young children, and there wasn't anything around like Good Grief, at least in this area. I had to take my boys to Richmond, Virginia for a long weekend where there was a bereavement camp for children. And then I found Good Grief in the last several years, a group based in New Jersey with 2 locations, Morristown and Princeton. I went through training to become a facilitator. And,
of course, yes.
And now every 2 weeks I in the evening, one evening a week, I'm a facilitator and I work with dozens of other volunteers who provide free service to families, and so hundreds of children every week are going through the Good Grief program, and it's all peer group type services. That I facilitated with another facilitator.
Okay.
A middle school age group of children. But there are all ages, starting with toddlers all the way up to adults, and they all go into their separate rooms and they have discussions. And every week there's a different activity to talk about. So it's an extremely well managed, well run, wonderful organization.
Wow, and benefiting from the personal experiences of people like you who have lost and now serve others who are deep into the grieving process. So I'm wondering, again, I've got this sort of catchword, dopey stuff. People are doing dopey stuff around me. And I'm wondering if you could talk about the common mistakes that you see people making, probably with the best of intentions, or just because people don't know how to be around a person who's lost someone. What do you see?
One of the most common dopey things is that people are uncomfortable with grief.
Yes.
And, that's fortunately, for them, many have never experienced it, and they just don't know how to act with those who are grieving. And, often it ranges from this fear of not wanting to say something or to ignore it, to, on the other end of the spectrum, feeling this need to fix that person, problem for that person, to do something that will make them feel better. For me, I guess whenever I need to be grounded on the right thing to do, I kind of go to a story that kind of lays out for me, the kind of the golden rule about how to help people with grieving.
Okay, the golden rule for grieving. Okay.
Well, it's at least it's the story of a man who lost his son to a suicide. And this is a story I heard through Good Grief, but it was a man who lost his son to a suicide, and people either didn't want to talk to him about it out of fear of upsetting him, or were asking invasive questions like, well,
no.
Why did this happen?
Right.
How could he have done
right.
this?
How did he do it?
Right.
Ugh.
Or
don't do that.
right. Or even worse. Like, how did this happen? What did he do to himself? I mean, that's probably the worst thing. And people do ask questions like that, amazingly. But this man was told a story about somebody who came. He was nervous about meeting somebody who didn't know the whole story, and the person who came met with him, and he said, I didn't know your son, so please tell me about him.
Just tell me about him.
Just tell me about him. And by doing that, it actually, this brings up some emotions for me, and I'm not exactly sure why, but it's just such a touching story.
Why,
but
right?
This is, in just doing that, those simple words, or it's acknowledging the son. It's not it's not ignoring the situation. Not, God forbid, I should bring up something about your son because I'll upset you. Or it's not asking questions about how this could happen. It's just being there. And that,
right.
I guess that's the golden rule, is being there. And being there is such an underrated thing, when it comes to death and dying,
right.
is that the fact that you're there and that you're there shows concern is what it's all about.
Allow me to share something similar from being a person with terminal cancer that it's a pretty short leash with stage 4 lung cancer. And the people whom I have appreciated the most for their candor, I mean, it's really just about being real, were the ones who say, I don't know how to talk to you. That was real. Like, I can handle.
Exactly.
I can handle that. Or, I'm sure I'm going to say the wrong thing, or I don't know if you want me to come or to not come. And I'm hearing it isn't so much about the content. It's about being present and owning your own feelings rather than projecting onto a dying person or a mourning person some assumption or something. The one that really gets me. The one that really gets me is if someone is uncomfortable or is in their fear, or just it's a hot potato, so they have to get rid of it. Projecting their sadness, their fears, their concerns, their questions onto me.
Sure.
I mean, I'm relatively okay with what's going on. I feel like I'm being real about my limited time. So,
but then you become worried about them.
Oh, sure. And now I'm worried about them.
Suddenly, it's like
taking care of
as
them.
if you don't have enough on your plate. You have to make them feel better, and that's not what it should be about.
Don't go there. Don't go there. I would like to just refer to another part of the video series, that there is a sort of a hierarchy in terms of the levels of intimacy. The dying person or the grieving person is at the center. Mm-hmm. We are the ones sending out needs and requests, and the people around us, the intimate friends, and then further out, the less intimate friends and the not so close relatives, their job is to provide support or honor the requests of the people who are at the center. And I've heard you say you had something similar when your wife knew that she was dying. Remind me what she said about people being there.
Well, she did not, her choice, and there were no rights and wrongs, but her choice was that she, in the matter of weeks or months that she had left, she just didn't want to spend that time dwelling on the sadness for the boys and what will happen to them. And that was her choice.
And she was at the core.
And she was at the core.
She was the
right.
decider
And this is what
case.
she wanted.
Right.
And as you described it, I was, my role and those in our immediate circle around her, had a responsibility to honor that and to respect that and to fulfill her wish.
Right.
Because it was, oftentimes people say it's your last chance to talk about these things. Well, it's also her last chance not to. And so I that's what I wanted to do for Sandy, is to kind of, and you I'm sure you deal with this, there are gatekeepers and it's a tough role.
Oh yeah, I've got a drag lady at
caught.
the door making my appointments for me
Right,
because
exactly,
I can't.
It's an important
handle it
role,
all.
and it's all about being respectful and honoring, as you put it, the wishes of the person in the center.
All right, I think we are going to go to another video to talk a little bit more about that. Thank you.